Welcome to this edition of the Celtics Rundown live stream. We've got a good friend of the program here with us. He is the one, the only Sam LaFrance from How About Them Celtics. You can also check out his and my work over at Hardwood Houdini. We have wall-to-wall coverage of Brad Stevens' press conference yesterday, and we'll continue keeping informed throughout the offseason. So be sure to go and check that out. Before we get to what's to come, Sam, let's take a look in the rear view at what just unfolded here. And beyond the obvious that Jason Tatum, unfortunately, suffered a torn Achilles. They were on the verge of being down 3-1 to the Knicks even before that happened. So why do you think a Celtics team that returned pretty much everyone from the group that won a championship a season ago ultimately came up short of their ultimate goal?
Yeah, I mean, look, they did not take care of business. Like, plain and simple, they had those first two games. All they had to do is not be the absolute worst in those games, and they did it. Once they were up 20 points, they just decided they didn't have to play anymore. And New York mounted the comeback. They fought hard. They did not just accept that they were down by a bunch of points. And that's been their identity throughout the playoffs, like they did it to the Pistons too. They had several clutch wins in that series. Boston just kind of got complacent when they were up a lot. The offense stalled out. They missed a lot of shots that everyone would say that they're going to make. And also, they definitely missed a healthy Porzingis. I did not go to that first because they essentially won a title last year without a healthy Porzingis, so it really doesn't matter. But it mattered in the context of this because he was out there and giving them less than 100% and probably negative effects on the game. Like, he was a shell of himself. He wasn't able to contribute. He was getting beat on the glass. He was missing shots he would usually make. He was essentially playing 4.5 on 5 or 4 on 5 if you want to say that much. But New York still had to step through the wide open door the Celtics left for them in those games. And they did it.
I didn't. You could have kept going there if I cut you off with the foul there on the pump fake.
No, I mean, look, it's disappointing for sure. I would have liked to see them go back to the conference final. I think we all would have, right? We would have liked to have more content for the next month. Really weird not having anything new, no games, nothing to look forward to until October. So that sucks. And it sucks that it was the Knicks. It's always bad when the terrorists win, right?
First off, shout out Daniel Barry from Sports Highlights. Happy Tuesday to you as well. Definitely an odd feeling, even as Jaylen Brown acknowledged that the Celtics, the Eastern Conference Finals had become an annual tradition. And this year, that's not the case. So to see the season end in May, that's unusual for this group. And it speaks to the success that they've had. To see it not occur because of what your geographical rival, at least, there's not a ton of history between the Celtics and Knicks, especially not in the playoffs. But geographical rival for sure, and a team that, quite frankly, you were better than, that you smoked in the regular season as you swept them 4-0 during that series. And it looked like it was par for the course in game one when you build this 20-point lead. And like you said, to squander it twice in a row, to see a team with championship pedigree look less composed and play with less poise than Jalen Brunson and co. down the stretch of these games, it was unexpected and atypical and surprising. And as a result, the Celtics, they dig themselves in this hole where more than anything else, Sam, I point to, you're getting quality shots for reliable shooters, and at a shocking clip, you're just not converting. It's almost like the basketball gods are sitting on the rim saying, leprechauns be damned, we're swatting these away. It's the Knicks' time. Even if that had happened and you end up putting yourself in a situation where you go into game 4 at Madison Square Garden and ultimately you're the team with a 3-1 lead by the end of that night, even if that happens and you closed out this series, I just don't think there was much gas left in the tank without Tatum. And so the idea that they were going to beat the Pacers without Jason, it seems unlikely to me based on what we saw.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think expectations ruin a lot of things. So had they been in that 3-1 hypothetical and took care of the series or whatever, first of all, that would have been my championship banner. I don't think I would have cared at that point. I would have been like, good, they still took care of these guys. But I probably would have talked myself into them beating the Pacers, right? I talked myself into, well, what if they come back after they won Game 5? So that's just kind of how it goes. If you have like emotional investment in the team, you're always able to talk yourself into things. But ultimately, they don't have that juice without Tatum. Tatum is a big cog in their basketball machine, and the machine did its function. It just didn't produce the results. Like you mentioned, the open shots they created in the fourth quarters of those games. Jack Simone and I on the How About Them Celtics podcast went back, watched all of them in both the collapses, and ultimately the takeaway was the threes were fine. In Game 2, it was the shots they got within the arc that were the more difficult ones, even though those were mostly fine too. It was just a story of them not dropping. And then when they didn't drop, the defense didn't do its job and things unraveled for them. But look, it's tough to exit this early. The summer's going to be an interesting one. I'm sure I know we're going to talk about it. Really, really disappointing way for a season with so much expectations to end.
Yeah, absolutely. And so as we start to look ahead, Brad Stevens has his end of season press conference yesterday. He does his best to put up a wall before it gets started with an opening statement that he relays, hey, we will talk about the summer and what's to come when I speak at the draft. But today is about looking back on this season. And a lot of people said, that's great. We came in here with questions about the second apron and the collective bargaining agreement and what's to come. So we're going to just Euro step right around those opening remarks from Brad Stevens. And look, he's a very good poker player. And I also think this was a pretty easy setting for him to deflect as much as he wanted to. And so within that, I do think there were some nuggets that maybe it's easy for people to gloss over because there's a lot of him just kind of giving not company answers, but answers that are kind of empty calories. But again, I do think there was some meaningful quotes from Brad Stevens yesterday. So I want to start with you. I'm curious, what are the takeaways? What are some of the comments that stood out on your end?
Well, first and foremost, him just giving you guys all the finger to start the press conference. You guys actually shouldn't have came out today because I'm not going to say anything. The most interesting thing that I took away from the Monday availability was when Noah Dalzell asked him about Jaylen Brown and how confident he is in Jaylen being able to lead the team next season. He took forever to be like, yeah, I think he's going to do a good job. Like, the first thing Brad Stevens said when they asked him about Jaylen, he's like, well, we have a lot of great players on this team. And with there being so much uncertainty around Jaylen's future with the team, not so much so because there's any indication that he would like to not be here, but more so all of these restrictions with the new CBA, all of the salary moves they're going to have to make this summer, and his salary being the largest on the team, where you can talk yourself into the Celtics getting away with a move like that if you'd like, right? You could be like, well, if they trade Jaylen, maybe you don't have to make as many moves and shift the rest of the rotation pieces around, then you have a stronger team when Tatum gets back, whatever you want to do. Or maybe the return for Jaylen's greater than any of the pieces that they're thinking about moving. Him not really immediately going out there to back up Jaylen was a little weird to me.
That's interesting because to me, I don't see Jaylen moving. Let's start with, I would be quite surprised if the Dallas Mavericks trade Cooper Flagg, the draft pick that's going to become him. I think they are well aware they have the chance to draft a 19-year-old with face of the franchise potential, and he's going to be on a rookie contract to start. And the gift that they received at lottery night, I don't think they're going to cash that in for something else. I think they're happy to add Cooper Flagg to their franchise. And so if it's not for Cooper Flagg, and maybe it's just not for anyone, for Brad Stevens, for what Jaylen means to the city, to this team, and the fact that he's 28 and still in his prime, on top of that, Sam, you have the reality that Bill Chisholm, as the new owner of this team, I think the last thing he wants to do from a PR standpoint is come in and his first major move is to trade a guy who meets that description of what I just said about Jaylen Brown, with how he resonates within the city, his impact in the community, that he was the finals MVP a year ago, that he's been here throughout his career, and people have been able to watch him grow from the kid that gets selected and says, I'm going to go to war for this city, to someone who then backs that up with his actions repeatedly. So I don't think the Celtics are trading Jaylen Brown. I'm quite confident in that. And I also thought there were instances where Brad Stevens went the opposite way with what you're saying, where he's talking about Jaylen being so important to the stability of this team as they navigate a season potentially without Jason Tatum. And now I'm going to welcome on the other half of How About Them Celtics.
Whoa, who woke him up?
The boss
so
man.
Sorry. I have been like in and out of consciousnly for the past 4 hours. I mean, listen, apologies. I'm very sorry to all the great listeners. I'm sorry to Bobby. My sleep schedule has been terrible ever since the season ended. I've almost slept through like 2 press conferences. I almost slept through Brad Stevens at 2 p.m. yesterday. I'm sorry. I'm here now. My bad.
Let me tell you something. I was telling, can relate. Also, it's kind of electric to have the pop-up cameo in the middle. It's like a surprise WWE return where someone just comes running out during
We'll
the
call
middle.
it that. Yeah. We'll call
Him
it
and
that.
Porzingis, we're taking both of them to the shed.
I don't want no, don't compare me to him right now. I'm very
on
grateful for his tenure, but I don't think that's where I want to be.
Jack, you asked the question to Brad the other day, so we'll go right to you and Kristaps. And I'm curious to get your reaction to Brad's comments about, we believe he's dealing with a post-viral syndrome, and it seems like something that he's just going to have to move on and accept that they never fully identified what it was specifically that zapped him. But as Brad Stevens noted, late in the regular season, they go to Madison Square Garden, and he's phenomenal at both ends of the floor, including late in the game. He locked down Jalen Brunson on a switch. He's making threes from the logo. And then it gets to the playoffs, and once again, he's just a shell of himself. And so what did you take from Brad's comments, and what happened to Kristaps Porzingis there down the stretch?
Yeah, I mean, the way Brad said it was almost like they think he had long COVID or something, because he was like, well, we've all spent so much time looking at this for the past 2 years, like, wink, wink. Like, I don't think they actually know, but like, I think he sort of made the hint that, I mean, we've all been looking at stuff like this ever since the pandemic and stuff like that. And I mean, you look up post-viral syndrome, it's also called chronic fatigue syndrome, which makes sense for what we saw. I really just think they don't know. And Kristaps didn't really have a ton of time to recover once the playoffs started. Brad talked about that too. Like, it's not exactly the best setting for him to get the rest he needs in. And so I think from there, it's just he needs the rest. And Brad also said he's going to play in Eurobasket for Latvia, which he thinks is a good thing, because by then maybe he'll be a little bit better rested. He'll have that time to recover. And I don't know. I think it was just really unfortunate timing for the playoffs. That said, I don't think there isn't blame to be handed out. Like, I don't think this is a situation where they can just be like, oh, it stinks. Like, then don't play him if you're Joe, or take yourself out if you're Kristaps. Like, there's also like solutions to that would have prevented what we saw on the floor. That said, the actual play and the actual way he felt was somewhat unavoidable. So you do feel for him.
Yeah, definitely. This is someone who was so excited to play a more meaningful role. And I do think his contributions, whether it's helping the Celtics get the top seed in not just the East, but the NBA last season, en route to a championship where they had home court throughout. And then he had a phenomenal game 1 of the finals, and he came back and he gave him what he could in game 5 when he defied the training staff and ultimately suited up for that game and helped them win a title. So I do think that gets glossed over, but nonetheless, he was excited to be a more meaningful part of this run. And it was almost worse having him on the floor and seeing him, to use the term again, just be a shell of himself out there and a liability. So Sam, I kick it to you with something that Jack touched on there. And that is the reality that if we're going to criticize Joe Mazzulla for this postseason run, especially against the Knicks, one of the major criticisms to me is how much he stuck with Kristaps, hoping that he would turn the corner and be more of a contributor, while Luke Kornet was so impactful every time he got on the floor.
I mean, did Joe Mazzulla just walk Luke Kornet right out the door? Did he kick him on the way out as his contract's expiring? No. Look, I think Joe Mazzulla is the biggest trust guy maybe in the NBA, where it's like if you're one of his guys, he's going to ride with you no matter what. And I think that's a strength and a weakness. I think last year it really proved to be a strength. I think the guys on this team collectively have all bought in and really have embraced Joe and the craziness and all of the, I mean, legitimately good mindset stuff he brings to the table. But I think his commitment to Porzingis was a like interpersonal relationship type thing where it's just like I know him, I trust him, I know he's doing his best to be out there. I think he's earned that opportunity, and I think there was some better or worse like word use gambling involved in this, where it's like, okay, we're gonna see. We're gonna see if he goes out there and delivers today. We sure hope so. It's like I said it to Jack on our show. It's like putting in a parlay and being like, today's the day I get rich. Let's see if it works. And I mean, you don't know if you don't put the bet in. That's what playing Porzingis in this series was. And every time you're just like, maybe, maybe, maybe. Game 6, you got like your first leg of the parlay hit, and it was like, oh, maybe we're gonna win today. We're gonna make all the money. And then they were dead.
To be honest, I think a lot of it had to do with desperation, just the hope that Kristaps was able to give them something. We talked about it going into the postseason that last year he was a luxury. This go around, he was a necessity. And you can talk about Celtics are better than the Knicks on paper and they waxed him in the regular season and you shouldn't need him for this series. That's all well and good. The reality is they did. And he would have made life even more difficult on Karl Anthony Towns. He would have helped an offense that for the first 2 games of this series could not make a shot to save its life, despite how many quality opportunities they were getting. And so I think he was just hoping that if I play Kristaps, if I start him, if I bring him off the bench, whatever the case, that at some point, even if Joe Mazzulla was skeptical like us that it was going to happen, if I don't try, I can't get that more beneficial answer for the collective where maybe he defies the odds and he snaps out of this. We all say unlikely, and it in fact never happened. But again, I think it was out of desperation more than anything that he continued to ride with Kristaps. And we saw him start to break away from it as he moved him off the bench at some points. But I want to pivot now to the comment to me that stood out as much as any from Brad Stevens the other night is when he gets asked about the restrictions facing the Celtics and, hey, is the goal of competing every year still a possibility for this team? And right away, the first line is, quote, I never put a ceiling on a group of players. Maybe this is a cynical interpretation, Jack, but I look at that as him put another way saying, you know, maybe they'll surprise me. I don't want to lower expectations, but basically acknowledging in his own way, as much as he can publicly, if we don't have Jason, I don't see us competing for a championship. And Jack, if they don't have Jason next season, I think they need to, there's no justification to me of remaining over the second apron when it's probably more likely than not that you don't have Tatum.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think they wanted to remain over the second apron anyways. And now that you're going to be without Tatum, there's really no point. I never thought of the way when he said that as that meeting. Like I never really thought of it that way. I more thought of it as I think it's unfair how everyone's just assuming we're going to tank. I don't think it's fair to put a ceiling on them, but I don't think that interpretation is wrong. Like I just never really thought of it that way. I don't know, man. Sam and I talked about this on our show yesterday. I think next year's team's gonna be a lot better than people are expecting. Like Sam and I got in a 20-minute long.
We went back and forth for 25 minutes.
Like, listen, I obviously think trading Kristaps at the very least, probably trading Drew, 80, 70, 65% trade Drew, get under the second apron for sure, get whatever you get back. Try to re-sign Cornette if you have enough wiggle room once you get under the apron by trading those guys. Hope Horford comes back so you have that. But once you're there, you're still going to have an all-star, all-NBA player in Jaylen Brown. You're still going to have a fringe all-star in Derek White. You're still going to have Peyton Pritchard, who looks primed for I don't want to say all-star jump, but at least fringe all-star jump. Like if I could easily see him putting up similar numbers to Derek White. Obviously, the defense won't be there, but similar offensive numbers with probably better efficiency based on what we've seen. You still have got Sam Hauser, who I know a lot of people are throwing in these trades. I don't think you should trade. I think it's hard to find that level of shooting or that consistency, that volume. I think you still have a good team. You'll have the rookies. You'll have Shireman coming up. I still think you can compete in the Eastern Conference. Maybe not at the highest level, but I think you can be a top 6 seed in the East, guarantee yourself a playoff spot, maybe win a first-round series. And maybe people don't agree with that. And I know people are always upset with mediocrity, but people forget that, like, this isn't just we're going to be stuck in mediocrity forever. This is deal with your mediocrity so you keep the talented core you have around one of the best players in the world. People are like ready to tank and ready to break things down as if Tatum's going to be gone forever. Like that's just not the case. The most likely scenario is that he's back in full for the 2027 the 26, right? 26-27 season.
26-27.
And yeah. And so if you trade Jaylen Brown, then you don't have like an all NBA running mate anymore. If you trade Derek White, then you don't have the best role player in the NBA anymore. Like I get trading Drew and Kristaps because you were almost always going to have to do that anyways for the second apron. But once you start getting the other stuff, that's an overreaction in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, look, we're in agreement on who should be, not even should be, is more likely to not be on the team next year, right? Like, I hate to see Holiday be on the trading block. I think he's been a really great fit with the Celtics. I think he's been an incredible just role model for like people playing basketball everywhere. Not even just kids. It's just like if you have better guys on your team, be happy to just do whatever you need to do to help your team win. And he's been the epitome of that for them. They rewarded him with the big contract last year, and they probably should have done it. There's like real reason why they took care of it before the playoffs. They didn't want that weird storyline looming as they tried to push towards 18. But now it's like, damn, man, you kind of got to trade him because when he's 37, you don't want to be paying him that much money. And the longer you wait to get off that contract, the less appealing it's going to be because teams can't even like talk themselves into, well, like the first year is going to be great. He's going to help us win because he's not getting any younger. And that part of it stinks. I don't know what I think of the. I have not picked a side yet. What I'll say about like the tank, don't tank is if you, I don't know, in my head, like the reason why I haven't picked a side is they're going to be in the play-in range in my head. I cannot lay out all the teams I think are better or worse. That's just what I think the roster will equate to. The Eastern Conference being weak does play a factor in me being a little bit underselling in this category. But in 5 years, if you look back on next season and you're like, man, thank goodness they pushed for the play-in or whatever. They could be a playoff team too. I'm not saying they can't. Or like, wow, it's really great that they got that young player in the draft to help keep the core strong around Tatum. The latter seems like it's the better option. But we don't really know what the roster is going to look like at this point. You don't know if Al's going to be back, if Cornette's going to be back. I think those two players play a big role in whatever is to come, whatever, competitive decisions are made, and we have to wait and see.
And then,
yeah,
not to cut you off, Bobby, this was always my counter. If you have Jaylen Brown and Derek White, you cannot tank in the Eastern Conference. And Sam will come back with, well, then bench them, and I come back with, that's just not what the Celtics.
It's not
do.
realistic.
And this is where the conversation devolved yesterday.
I mean, Sam, there's no way that they're going to.
He didn't exactly say bench them, to his credit. He was like, see if they're a little
just
hurt off.
Manage their minutes accordingly.
Yeah. Which I understand.
It's more of like it's like putting your foot in the pool, and like if it's too cold, you just kind of take your toe out. You're like, all right, like whatever, they can rest. But like if things are going well, I don't think you should just like railroad it and be like, no, we want to lose. Like, I just think of the season Philly had. Granted, there was a lot of things that went wrong for them, like real injuries. Embiid is a disaster, as is Podcast P is in front of the microphone. McCain's on TikTok recovering from his ACL, and Tyrese Maxey got hurt too. But there was a layer to like serious tanking at the end for them, and it helped them get the third pick. So, like, I could be persuaded either way. I'm open for business. I'm a free agent.
Okay, let's start here. The Celtics, as Jack said, they're going to be too talented to tank. They're looking at, I would project a range of outcomes for where they finish in the East between 5 and 8. And maybe it's a little bit wider on both ends of that spectrum there, but that's how I size them up, that they're going to be pretty good, even though it's not going to be the championship contender we've grown accustomed to seeing. Next up is that Jaylen Brown wants this type of opportunity and has happily sacrificed for the best of the team and running alongside Jason Tatum and what that requires from him for this group to be at their best. But you're not going to go to him and have that conversation go over well if it's, hey, there's going to be a lot of fourth quarters, Jaylen, where for the sake of a better draft pick and the future that you're going to be a part of, which he can't buy into that. He spent his whole career on the rumor mill that, you know, we're going to have to sit you out in the final frame or in the late stages, especially if it's close. That's not going to go over well. That's going to create friction. And so it's just not realistic on a human level. It's not realistic from just a strategy and an execution standpoint where you're going to see the Celtics. Like the year that the Mavericks got Luka Doncic, they would get to the fourth quarter, and if it was competitive, anyone who was having a good night was suddenly on the bench next to Rick Carlisle. It was not so shrewd of a tank job to get in there. The other side of it, like you mentioned, the Sixers had a ton of injuries. It wasn't that it was a complete failure on the court with a large sample size for Embiid, Podcast P and company, and then they ultimately just started sitting these guys. They were in street clothes to begin with, and the lottery, the ping pong balls bounced their way. They could have just as easily lost their pick, period. Just like the Celtics, they could try to tank. I think they're too talented for it. They could end up with the 14th pick instead of the 3rd or 4th or whatever. And, you know, we haven't really looked at the draft for next year. And so maybe you end up with the 7th pick, and that's not too encouraging, even for a team that's getting Tatum back and has Jaylen Brown at the top of its hierarchy. So the Celtics, as Jack said, they're not going to tank. They're too good for it. There's a human component to this. And Sam, I'll throw it back to you, because I think what you're in for is actually a pretty exciting year, especially from individual storylines like Peyton Pritchard. But people are going to, I think it's going to be, Sam, comparable to the Isaiah Thomas Bridge years, where the expectation is not a championship. And so you're playing with house money. And if you watch that team succeed to a meaningful level, it just gets more fun and easier to enjoy the ride.
Yeah, I think the Isaiah years are a pair of seasons, or 2.5 seasons, whatever you want to call them, that people within this community really cherish. It was awesome. The overachievement was real. The expectations were low. The expectations next year are going to be low. You're right. Like, there is a real opportunity for just like a relaxing season where every time they lose, we don't have to be like, does this mean they're not contenders? What does this Atlanta Hawks loss in January mean? What does it say about them? You know, I think there's going to be a lot of opportunities for the Shiremans and whoever they draft this year maybe to earn at least like a fair amount of minutes. Not saying they're going to be the key pillars to the rotation, but they'll have a chance to prove themselves. It'll be really good for the roster building in terms of when Tatum is back. That way Missoula can trust those guys with how big he is on trust. And also, they know what they have. They might have cheaper guys that are giving them good production on rookie scale contracts, which is maybe the most important thing with the new CBA, the way that it has a vice grip on everything. You're going to have to find a way to replace the sort of production that Porzingis, that Holiday give you. And listen, there was the Steinlein article by Jake Fisher in March that was the first to really broach this CBA restriction, second apron stuff that they are battling. And when he mentioned Holiday, Shireman was a guy that he pitched as like the team has confidence that he can step in and do some of the stuff Holiday does. That's yet to be seen. Doesn't feel like a perfect one-for-one solution, but you can see it at least a little bit offensively where, if nothing else, Shireman is sharp with the ball. He knows what play to make. He makes good passes, and he's a fun playmaker. Maybe not the perfect one. He's a little flashy, but I think you can trust him.
Well, Jack, it starts with Summer League, which I'm very excited. We will be making a return trip to Las Vegas in July. And so that's where it starts for Baylor Shireman. But what do you want to see from him as he builds off an encouraging rookie year where when he got opportunities, he tended to make the most of them?
I just want to see Shireman continue to play the way he plays, right? Like, I think in terms of taking Holiday's minutes, it is absolutely a good player, but I don't want, and this is not what Sam was saying. This is like a thought I had, like thinking off of that, like bullet point, which is very true. Jake Fisher said that the Celtics are very confident in Shireman, which means they're okay trading Holiday. Like, don't be obsessed with like Shireman becoming Holiday, because Shireman is a very great player, right? Like you can see the outline for a quality player there. I know Joe Ingles was a common draft comparison, and you can kind of see it because of the lefty, because of the way he plays. He's a very good playmaker for his size. He's an insane rebounder. I think his defense is improving day by day. Like, if you can have a guy who is a quality catch and shoot shooter, I don't think he's ever going to be like a Sam Hauser, Peyton Pritchard catch and shoot guy. He like, to me, he looks more like he's going to be more comfortable off the dribble, but I think he'll be fine. Like, I think he can shoot 38% from three. Maybe he can inch towards that 40, depending on his volume. And he can also put the ball on the floor, make plays. Like you talk about for years, we're looking at the development of Grant Williams failed, couldn't develop the off the dribble game, putting the ball on the floor. Sam Hauser gotten better at it. He can hit those middies. He can make a little bit of plays. Baylor Shireman is already better than both of those guys at putting the ball on the floor and making plays out of it, like just naturally. And so you already have that, that layer to his game, and you already have the outline for a more complete player. And that's not a knock on Hauser and Grant Williams, both of whom I think are quality NBA players in their own right. Baylor Shireman already has that extra little bit offensively. Now the questions will all come like, can he hold up defensively? Will he get targeted? All that stuff. He's looked pretty good, but how will look if he gets extra minutes? I think you have the outline of a very good, X-tool NBA player, whatever you want to call it. So I think as long as he continues on this development, he absolutely can take the Drew Holiday minutes, at least from a soaking them up perspective, like not from nobody's going to step in and beat Drew Holiday. But I do think you have the outline of a good rotation piece that can help this year and when Tatum comes back.
Yeah, first off, shout out to Ma Irene. We see you over there. And then secondly, when it comes to Baylor Shireman, in today's NBA, you cannot be Jason Capono or Steve Novak. You have to be able to put the ball on the deck and make a play. And like you said, Sam got me over there.
I feel a little marginalized over here. I feel like my dreams are dead.
It's a tough break, Sam. I hate to be the one to deliver the news, but you still have Glow Ball to go and cook. And so when it comes to Baylor Shireman, we all know gets as much attention as anyone who was excelled at another sport, and they make it professionally. It's a storyline that gets pounded, but he was an excellent high school quarterback, and you see that vision play a significant role in what he brings to the table offensively, where he's able to anticipate and create windows and all this stuff as a passer. He's very comfortable putting the ball on the floor and making a play out of it. Like Jack said, right now, at least, he's more comfortable shooting off the bounce than he is off the catch, curling off a pin down, for example. So with Shireman, what he brings to the table, combined with there's a gritty nature to his game, and he'll just throw himself after a defensive rebound with this reckless abandon that I enjoy watching. And I think his team appreciates, because when you come off the bench, one of those mandatory requirements is that you provide an injection of energy, and he does that. So I am very excited to see what growth looks like for Baylor Shireman, especially like you said there, the more we see him defensively, what does that look like? But if it's all about winning with anticipation for him, he's a sharp enough guy that I think with more work on his body and more reps, he'll be able to evolve. Just as Sam Hauser was able to understand, it's essential that I start to make plays off the dribble. I can't just be a spot up guy. I think that Baylor Shireman can make some semblance of a leap there defensively to be able to hold up, even if it's a rocky road for him next season. So Shireman is high on the list of players that I'm excited to see what it looks like. Jack, I'm curious. I'm going to start with you here. Sam, this question is going to go to you after him. It's a bit unfair because it's so early in the offseason process right now. But when you look at, goal number one for trades with Porzingis and Drew Holiday, because I'm with you, by the way, Jack, that I think they can get under the second apron and then keep Sam Hauser. But as you look at trades for the Celtics, and roster reconfiguration, the primary return is, of course, saving money, getting under that second apron. But as you look at players, whether it's names or they fit a certain archetype, what do you look at as, okay, either this profile or these individuals specifically would make sense as options the Celtics might want to or should look at bringing back?
It's tough because I think in a Porzingis trade, you're almost resigned to we dump him and get back whatever they offer, right? Because if you want to talk about all-time low value, it's right now. Outside of the fact that he's on an expiring contract, so maybe teams are be willing to take that risk and do whatever. I mean, we'll see. I think the answer is twofold, right? On the one hand, you need a setter. You need a big man almost certainly, unless you can guarantee that Cornette and Horford are coming back, which I really don't know. And if both of those guys are gone, you're left with Nemish Queta as your starting center. And
even if it's just Horford, you need one.
Even if one of those two guys leaves, even if just Horford retires and you manage to re-sign Cornette, or if vice versa, you still need another big, because I'm sorry to all the Nemish Queta lovers. After that, you need to look at, okay, maybe do we need a guard? Because for as much as you have Derek White and Peyton Pritchard, which is awesome, you don't really have anything past that if you trade Drew Holiday, right? We've talked about Baylor Shireman as a replacement for minutes. He's a wing. We talked about Sam Hauser. You can keep him. He's a wing forward. We've talked about all these guys. Jordan Walsh, even if he miraculously develops into something even better, he's a wing, right? You don't really have guards. Maybe you bank on J.D. Davison. You give him a chance, which I don't actually hate. I think he actually earned that chance. And if you're not going to be amazing anyways next year, you might as well see what you got on a very cheap contract. But you can find those in the draft, but you could also find those in a Drew Holiday trade if you want to get back. Like, this is completely made off the top of my head. This is not a real trade, but like, trade Holiday to the Wolves, get Dante DiVincenzo and one of their forwards, or trade. And I don't even know if that's realistic because I think they're a second apron team, so I don't want to like put anything out there that's not realistic. But maybe you trade them to the Mavericks, but they don't really have guards. Maybe you get, Dante Eggs is expiring, but you could get like a PJ Washington and a Daniel Gafford. So the Gafford would solve some of your center problems. Or you'll trade him to the Spurs and say, hey, can we get, Devin Vassell and Harrison Barnes? And that solves nothing really. So it's just hard because you look around the league and a lot of these options are contracts that are forwards. But I think the guards and the big men questions are looming a little bit larger. But then again, if you're going to lose Tatum for a year, an extra forward couldn't hurt either. So I think the Celtics have found themselves in an unfortunately unique spot where they could really take anything, but I think guards and centers are the most important.
Yeah, really looks stupid not to have Jaden Springer anymore, huh?
I don't know about that. I love that it wasn't rhetorical. You're actually waiting for a response there.
I was gonna see. It was gonna be rhetorical, but I was like, maybe somebody will like laugh. It just bombed.
You also could have gone with Lonnie Walker there.
No, I didn't want to make Jack have his blood pressure spike.
He couldn't have.
Well, that's why he absolutely could have, Jack.
If you have Lonnie Walker in your team, you're a losing basketball team.
But I wouldn't put it past him.
In all seriousness, Jack, nail on the head. You absolutely need to get a big guy. The draft is big. I can't undersell how important I personally think the draft is. I know I just said big man, but like if you're looking to invest in your guard room, Walter Clayton might be there around that pick you have. Might be a little too small to buy in like with future stock, right? Like little guards really don't have the best lifespan or success rate in today's NBA, but he was really awesome in the tournament, and I don't know, maybe you hit on him. Also, the kid from Creighton, Kalkbrenner, is that his name? Right?
Brian Kalkbrenner, yeah.
Somebody emailed our show about him. We'll talk about it. I was on my 2K draft yesterday and I got him, so they should pick him. Hey, Jack, it happened to you with Grant Williams. He was your team legend.
True. He was my All-NBA player.
Also in my 2K.
Elgrid Naz big board for the NFL draft. It's your version of that.
And then I also got Tyler Kolek in a draft night trade. So that could also help your
You would go for Rhode Island.
I had to. If you can find a way, get him here. Whatever it takes.
You would trade with the Knicks?
Yeah. Nemi.
Whatever it takes. How steep are we talking?
No, it would have to be a real trade. You can't.
What would it look like? What would it look like, hypothetically? It would not be that expensive.
It would have to be like
seconds. Like it would be so inconsequential.
Unless they like him and they don't want to give him up for seconds, and then they don't really want anything else.
Yeah, if they like him, I don't even know if they would deem it worth it for the 28th pick in the draft. They might just rather the guy they have.
Well, they'd probably be afraid of his New England pride helping him push to the next level of professional basketball. That could be a factor. It
didn't get in the way for the Knicks as a team last round.
They should have made him part of the Anton Watson trade. That's what they should have done. They should have put their foot down. Oh, that was not a trade. You're right. They should have blocked the signing. Brad Stevens should have made a stink in the front office. I mean, listen, you can't have Cooper Flagg. That's the next best thing.
Yeah. All right, I'll start here. I want to make just a quick note, and we're past the 40-minute mark, so maybe I should have brought this up earlier, but it really just kind of, I wasn't planning on throwing it out there, so I'm just going to kind of make this note, and then we'll get to the last topic on the docket, and that is, I wonder if there's a more satisfactory trade where basically two teams have a deal lined up and the Celtics can attach themselves in a way where they're able to offload Porzingis' contract, and the return is there's a pretty significant gap in salary between outgoing and incoming, and it's a player you get back that you're somewhat excited about, like a Kelly Olynyk from the Pelicans. There's some kind of deal that New Orleans lines up that the Celtics can attach themselves to. That's what I wonder. I'd be pretty excited about that. Ultimately, Jack touched on a name that it makes as much sense as any in these potential Celtics scenarios, and that is Harrison Barnes. I would not be the least bit surprised if one of these trades ends up with him coming to Boston. I also, when you look at it, he might even end up starting for the Celtics next season. I don't love that, but it might just be the reality without Jason Tatum. So we'll have to see what's to come on that front. But my last question, we'll start with Jack and then go right to Sam. They have the 28th and the 32nd picks in the draft, Jack. Do you think it's in their best interest to consolidate those and see how far they can move up?
No, I think they should make the picks. I think make both picks. Get in two guys around that range who, I mean, it's been proven you can find quality talent around that range anyways. I think once you get past really pick 10, it's kind of a free-for-all anyways. And I don't think they could get into the top 10 with those two picks. And so I think you get up, you get a guaranteed 4-year contract, 2 and 2, with 2 years of a team option with that first round pick. And then you can use the second round rookie exception to get another guaranteed contract like you did with Jordan Walsh a couple years ago if you like the player enough. And I think that gives you 2 very cheap contracts who at the worst case, you get rid of them in a couple years if they don't pan out. But at best case, you have 2-3 years of quality play with guys that you found diamonds in the rough. I think you just start throwing darts. I think with the CBA, you almost have to.
Absolutely have to. I mean, financially favorable contracts, that is what you need. At this point, you need to relieve yourself of all these penalties that are coming along with overspending. The league does not want to see teams overspend. Jack had thrown the idea of a lot of draft picks coming back in a trade to me on the show yesterday. And I think I won't, because the trade was just nonsense. But if you can get draft picks, it's going to help you. Like, I cannot stress enough how, this is the most excited I think I've ever been for the draft. Maybe not more than the 2 J years, but regardless, it's very important because you're seeing teams fall apart at the seams because of these restrictions. Bill Chisholm buying the team doesn't really help because now he just comes into this weird situation where he's going to have to cut costs and it doesn't look good. But yeah, you got to find cheap options. That is the number one goal.
Yeah, it's funny because on one hand, you look at next season just from a macro sense and say, there should be plenty of opportunities for 2 rookies if they're good enough to go out there and play. At the same time, the Celtics are a team that wisely goes best player available compared to let's draft position X, even if we like someone better elsewhere. But that could create a difficulty where maybe 2 guys are, these 2 rookies are competing against each other for playing time. And is that iron sharpens iron, or one or both of them end up not getting the minutes they need to properly develop in their rookie season? Not to mention that if you add a wing, for instance, are they now competing for minutes off the bench with Shireman and Hauser, for example? So what it looks like on that front is going to be really interesting. I do generally subscribe to, with the draft is such a crapshoot, regardless of sport, that multiple kicks at the can is for the best. And if you can get two young guys on rookie contracts, then do your best to develop them. Tell Joe Mazzulla that, hey, it's really important that if we think we have something in one or both of these guys, we got to play them, maybe even some moments where you want to lean on a veteran. So it's going to be interesting to see what route Brad Stevens and Mike Zarin and company take there on draft night. But I'm all for sticking and picking with 28 and 32. There might have to be a little bit of consideration for, okay, whatever we draft positionally at 28, maybe we go a different direction at 32. And Mike Zarin has always complained that, hey, it's really hard when the draft comes before what happens with free agency and summer transactions in projecting and all that. But I think ultimately the Celtics just pick it and stick it and hope for the best there and let those then influence your decisions. That's going to wrap up this edition of Celtics Rundown. Jack Simone, we start with you. We give you the floor to plug and promote anything you want, whether it's related to how about them Celtics or the new work that has come out over at Hardwood Houdini as we provide wall-to-wall coverage on Brad Stevens' end-of-season press conference and what is to come for this franchise. Jack Simone, we start with you.
Oh, sorry. I thought that was the wrap up. I'm so sorry. Yeah. Hardwood Houdini, like Bobby said. Appreciate it. Thank you for having me. Clearly, I'm out of sorts today. Clearly, this is not my day.
Jack,
no coffee yet for the man.
I would literally conversation.
I have coffee in the fridge too.
Oh, that's clutch. Literally, the conversation with me and Sam beforehand was, my head is a bowling ball. Sleep schedule is all kinds of warped right now, and it's like, I had to be up early today to do some work stuff, and now it's kind of like we're getting towards the end of the finish line. There's going to be a little bit of time before any major news surrounding the Celtics or any press conferences happen. So this is the window starting now, Jack, for us to kind of get back to a somewhat normal sleep cycle and overall schedule.
I got to figure it out, man. Thank you, Bobby, for having me. I promise next time I will not be in a state of disarray. And I'll tap out. That'll be my outro. I don't deserve any more screen time. Give me out.
I'll do all the plugs for him.
I like the WWE come running down the tunnel in the middle of the match. It was fun. I wish we had some entrance music queued up for you. Sam LaFrance.
Then he just got hit with a chair.
Social media and then
he got put out cold at the end of this.
Well, the worst part is I was about to start saying something, then I was like, wait, no, I think that was the outro. I don't want to ruin it, and so I stopped talking. And then I was like, Jack was already.
You were looking off in a different direction.
I know. I was right the first time. It's because I thought that was the outro, so I moved you guys to my second monitor because I'm like, okay, it's the outro. I don't want to ruin it. I'm just gonna let them.
It's all good. Sometimes I get the ball out quickly. Quite often I can be long-winded. So starting with Jack, the floor is yours, and then giving a spiel, I can understand why that got lost.
No, this one's on me. This one's on me. Yeah.
Thanks, brother. Sam, all you.
All right. Well, you can find both Jack and I at How About Them Celtics on YouTube. New stuff coming out every morning. We're going to have a lot of fun stuff, trade-related stuff, draft-related stuff coming out in the coming weeks because what else are we going to talk about? These other teams? No. Why would we? No, we are going to talk about them on the pods too. But we will be focusing on the Celtics and all the changes that are to come. And you can find all of us on Hardwood Houdini. If you can't get enough of the guys on the screen, just go to their website. You'll have yourself a blast.
Yep, be sure to go and support Hardwood Houdini. Like I said, wall-to-wall coverage of everything that's transpired, including Brad Stevens' end-of-season press conference, and, of course, what is to come as the Celtics enter a summer of uncertainty. You can also check out my work at Forbes, including an interview with a leading expert in Achilles repair and his outlook on what the future holds for Jason Tatum, the advancements in treating an Achilles tear, and the most important steps for Jason Tatum right now as he embarks on a long road to recovery. And the Celtics Rundown live stream, it will return on Thursday at noon with two very special guests who I will reveal closer to when we go live. But thank you for supporting and tuning in to this episode, and enjoy the rest of your week.